Good evening. This meeting is being broadcast, good evening, all city councilors, and to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and Spectrum Channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. If you would like to receive an electronic city council packet to reference while viewing future broadcasts, please contact the city clerk's office during business hours or go to the city's website and subscribe to the city's meetings email list. The agenda is also accessible from any mobile device. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Kate M. Bosley.
Here.
Laura E. Tobin.
Here.
Michael J. Remy.
Here.
Randy L. Filio. Robert C. Williams.
Here.
Edward J. Haas.
Here.
Philip M. Jones.
Present.
Andrew M. Madison.
Here.
Chris E. Roberts.
Here.
Jacob R. Favelis.
Here.
Brian J. Lake.
Here.
Catherine I. Workman.
Here.
Bettina A. Chadbourne.
Here.
Thomas F. Powers.
Here.
And Mitchell H. Greenwald.
Yes.
And Councilor Haas, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now take up the minutes of our November 21st meeting. Councilor Greenwald for a motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt the minutes of the November 2024 meeting as presented.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Greenwald and seconded by Councilor Bosley. Are there any comments or corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. To follow up on a few announcements, the United Way campaign is still underway, and we're making some progress. We could always make more. Last meeting, we talked about a council workshop on rules of order. We found a date, so without any objections, I'd like to suggest that September 28th at
September.
January 28th.
September.
Yeah, I know, you do, for sure. But, sorry, January 28th, 2025 at 6 p.m. So we'll use that both as an educational opportunity on rules of order and also take up at least one pending topic that we've talked about. So if you've got specific items of interest for that meeting, please call those to my attention. You have on your desks a holiday party invitation. It's being hosted at the President's Residence at Keene State College. The invitation is for you and a guest, and if you would please communicate your attendance to Nicole Howe, please do so in the next week. We're going to be taking up appointments tonight to many committees that it's just a usual thing at the end of a calendar year that some of those terms of office, which are generally 3 years, expire. And we've got a good list there, you probably noticed. What I'd like to call to the public's attention is that there are alternate positions that could still be filled on most of the committees and commissions of the council, and I should say boards and commissions of the council. So if there are people that would like to express an interest, please go to the city's website, look under boards and commissions, and you can see on the first sentence that you can apply, express your interest, and it'll be given consideration. And I'll turn to the clerk now to lead us through the hearings that we've got tonight.
We have two hearings this evening. Our first one is a change to the Land Development Code. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Keene City Council relative to Ordinance O 2023-16C relating to permitted uses in the downtown core and commerce districts. The petitioner, the City of Keene Community Development Department, proposes to amend Section 8.3.2 of Article 8 of the Land Development Code to add a definition for charitable gaming facility and amend Table 8-1 and Table 5.1.5 to display charitable gaming facility as a permitted use in the Commerce District with limitations. The most recent version of this ordinance includes a requirement for charitable gaming facilities to be a minimum distance of 250 feet from multi-family properties and removes the requirement for this use to provide electric vehicle charging stations. In addition, the petitioner proposes to amend Section 8.4.2.C.2A of Article 8 of the LDC to remove drive-through uses as a permitted use by special exception in the downtown core district.
So the public hearing is now open. I'd like to invite Mary Brunner to, and there you are, to lead us through the points of interest in this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mary Brunner, Senior Planner. So this ordinance has coming before you tonight for its third public hearing. So I'm just going to review what's happened since this full body last saw it. If you'll recall, you referred it back to the Joint Planning Board and PLD Committee, and the Joint Planning Board and PLD Committee held a public workshop on this ordinance on October 15th. During that public workshop, the board discussed the ordinance and made two changes to it. The first one was to remove the requirement to provide electric vehicle parking spaces as part of the use standards for this use. And the other change was to amend the 250-foot distance requirement to include multifamily residential uses in addition to single-family and two-family. So those are the two changes that were made during that ordinance, or during that workshop on this ordinance. I will just briefly, because I know it's been a while, review what the overall ordinance does at a very high level. So basically, this ordinance establishes a use definition for charitable gaming facilities specifically, and it says where they're allowed within the city, which would be in the Commerce District, in certain areas, on parcels that are greater than 1.25 acres in size. And so specifically, it would be land with frontage on West Street, west of Island Street, Winchester Street, south of Island Street, and north of Cornwall Drive, Main Street, south of New Hampshire Route 101, and north of Silent Way, and Key Road, Ashbrook Road, and Kit Street. So mostly these are areas that are along main corridors through the city or in sort of plaza settings that these would be allowed. There are some distance requirements. So these uses, you'd only be allowed to have one per lot, and they can't be within 500 feet of each other. So one charitable gaming facility can't be within 500 feet of another one. Or 250 feet of a place of worship, daycare center, or private or public school, 250 feet of a single-family, two-family, or multifamily property. That's one of the changes. And then 250 feet of a residential zoning district. There's also a minimum square footage for the gaming area of 10,000 square feet. With respect to parking and traffic, those standards basically require that the commercial loading zones or bus and truck loading and parking would all comply with other standards within our ordinance or within the zoning ordinance for noise and screening and things like that. And in addition, the off-site parking requirement is proposed to be 0.75 parking spaces per gaming position. And a gaming position is defined as one seat at an electronic gaming machine or gaming table. So that's just at a very high level, though, what the ordinance is. I guess with that, I'll take questions.
Council Bosley?
Thank you, Mary. I'd also just like to point out that this ordinance contains a Main Street drive-through component as well, doesn't it?
Yes, thank you, sorry.
So if
Yep.
we could just highlight that as well. I know it's not been the main topic of discussion around this, but I think we all need to be aware it's included.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. You're correct. So that portion hasn't changed from how the ordinance was originally introduced back in October of 2023. So basically, drive-throughs are in Keene treated as an accessory use. Currently, they're allowed in downtown core, which is, Main Street and Central Square, with a special exception. And so this ordinance would propose to remove that, so they wouldn't be allowed with a special exception in downtown core. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Very good. Any questions of Mary? Seeing none, thank you, Mary. Now open up the hearing to members of the public. Anybody wishing to speak to this proposed ordinance? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and that written comments will be accepted up until Tuesday at 1 p.m., that's December 10th. And the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee will take this up at their next regular meeting on December 11th. But no public comments will be accepted at that meeting. They need to be submitted in advance. Okay, very good. Move on to the second public hearing.
This is relative to a community development block grant. 3 public hearings regarding a proposed application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for federal community development block grant funds will be held at Keene City Hall on December 5th at 7 p.m. CDBG funds are awarded on a competitive basis in New Hampshire and may be used for projects which have primary benefit for low and moderate income persons. The City of Keene is eligible to apply for $500,000 per program year in each of the following categories: housing, public facilities, and economic development, as well as $750,000 for micro-enterprise technical assistance. Communities may also apply for up to $25,000 for feasibility studies and $500,000 for CDBG emergency grants annually. Housing grant proposals may request an additional $250,000 if they are providing permanent supportive housing and services, totally $750,000. A public hearing has been scheduled to provide specific information regarding grant requirements and to provide information about the proposed CDBG application to be considered by the council. The proposal to be considered is a grant application for CDBG funds to support the development of new affordable housing. The project would be undertaken by Keene Housing and its affiliate, Monadnock Affordable Housing Corporation. The project would include the new construction of 30 apartments on the former Roosevelt School property to be known as Roosevelt West Housing at 438 Washington Street, and will be leased to low and moderate income households. This will be the second phase of a 2-phase project, of which Phase 1, Roosevelt East Housing, is currently underway. In conjunction with the application hearing, 2 additional public hearings will be held to address the city's residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan specific to this project, and the city's updated housing and community development plan for CDBG projects, including the designation of Monadnock Affordable Housing Corp. As a community-based development organization.
And we'll be taking up all 3 of these hearings in this evening's meeting. Before opening the public hearing on the CDBG grant application, I'd like to cover the process that we'll be following this evening. The Community Development Finance Authority has very specific protocols on how these public hearings are handled. The public hearing notice identifies the three different components. We've covered those: the CDBG application, the residential anti-displacement, and the relocation assistance plan, and the housing and community development plan. I'll be opening and closing each of these segments separately. Upon the close of the final hearing, I'll call forward Resolution R 2024-45, which is in your packets. Finally, as this application is time-sensitive, I'll be looking for a suspension of the rules in order to allow action upon the resolution. And now we'll open up the public hearing to address a proposed community development block grant application and request that and the clerk has already read this, and I'd like to recognize Mr. Jack Ahern to address the grant request.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. My name's Jack Ahern. I'm with Southwest Region Planning Commission. I'm going to start by providing a brief overview of the Community Development Block Grant Program as per federal requirements, and then I'll tell you about this specific application. CDBG funds are available to municipalities for economic development, public facilities, and housing rehabilitation projects that primarily benefit low and moderate income persons. The City of Keene is eligible to receive up to $500,000 a year for public facility and housing rehabilitation, up to $500,000 a year for economic development, up to $750,000 for microenterprise technical assistance, and up to $500,000 in emergency funds. Feasibility studies are available for up to $25,000. Housing grant proposals may request an additional $250,000 if they are providing permanent supportive housing and services, totaling $750,000. I provided a handout describing the New Hampshire Community Development Block Grant Program eligible activities that include the area HUD income limits to meet low and moderate. The proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority is for the max $750,000 to allow Keene Housing, on behalf of their affiliate, Monadnock Affordable Housing Corporation, to construct new affordable housing on the former Roosevelt School property at 438 Washington Street. The Roosevelt School property was recently acquired by Keene Housing for the purpose of developing 60 affordable housing units through a two-phase project. The former school building is currently undergoing renovations to be converted into 30 units as phase one of the development. This application is for funding to support phase two, the new construction of an additional 30 units on the property, which will total 60 when the project is complete. Keene Housing, in cooperation with its affiliate, Monadnock Affordable Housing Corporation, seeks to develop 30 units consisting of 22 one-bedroom apartments and 8 two-bedroom apartments. Additionally, 3 of the units will meet uniform federal accessibility standards. The apartments will be leased to low and moderate income households, and all residents will have rental subsidies. And I'm here tonight with Linda Mangonis and Joshua Meehan of Keene Housing to provide more detail and answer any questions that the council might have.
Presenting solo, or?
I mean, sure, but if you guys ask me anything really difficult, I'm going to need Linda.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My name's Josh Meehan, Executive Director of Keene Housing. Thank you. Thanks. Well, Jack covered it really well, and actually many of you were here when we came for the Community Development Block Grant application for Phase 1. So this really is very similar in terms of the distribution of units, et cetera, as Jack described. The big difference between Roosevelt School East and West is that East, as those of you who travel up Washington Street know, is the existing school, and we're busy with our work there. West, which we're applying for funding for now, will be all new construction. Otherwise, it's actually very, very similar. We're looking for the same amount through Community Development Block Grant. I mean, the overall funding for the project will be a little bit different than the first phase. The first phase was 9% low-income housing tax credits. For Phase 2, we'll be pursuing 4% low-income housing tax credits. We have a host of other sources compared to the first project, because that's kind of how we have to do this work, is beat the bushes and try and find funding to support these projects. And we are happy to report that Senator Shaheen has included $2 million in community development funds for West for this project that we're coming to you with today. We're hoping that there will be a fiscal year '25 federal budget, because if there isn't, then we won't get those funds, but we have already accounted for the fact that that may not come. And so that won't put a $2 million hole in the project. We have ways to cover that. But generally, as I said, it's very similar to the first phase. So I'm happy to take questions if there's anything anybody has any particular questions about.
Do you have the status of that appropriation before Congress?
Yeah, so basically all, both on the House side and the Senate side, members have gotten through their houses, their congressional directed spending. It's already been taken care of. The issue that people all around the country are facing right now is that it's unclear whether there will actually be a fiscal year '25 federal budget, or if the Congress will do something called a continuing resolution for the entire year. In other words, and if that were to happen, the '24 funding levels would just continue through the fiscal year '25, and the federal government would operate without a '25 budget. It's unclear right now what's going to happen with that, but there are people way above my pay grade who could probably describe the details better than I can.
That raised a few hands. I see Counselor Jones first, and then Counselor Roberts, Counselor Fedleys.
Joshua, thanks for this proposal. I think it's a great project at the perfect timing. I think.
Thank you.
It's good for this. But your RFP, is it two different RFPs, or is both phrases going to be in one RFP?
No, so Roosevelt School East, one that we come for a CDBG through the city for previously, is underway, and we're gathering the funding now for West. So for example, the majority of the funds for that project will be equity generated through the low-income housing tax credit program, in this case a 4% tax credit, which is bond financing, private activity bonds, which are bundled, all the 4% deals that are approved by New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. They bundle them all up and they put them on the street, and then at that point we would get our funding. We do expect to hear about the status of that application next week, we hope, and that is the largest piece of the funding for us. And in addition to that, we've applied for the first time. As I said, we're kind of always looking for new and different funding sources. So we've applied for funds through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. They have an affordable housing program that is a grant that we've applied to as well, and we should hear about that funding in the next 2 weeks as well. Thank you.
And Counselor Roberts?
I'm going to ask a real kind of tough question, and people might think I'm a villain or whatever. We went out of our way to help support the 100-night shelter. We did a lot, and then part of the thing what we weren't really paying attention to is with the 211 program, and basically a lot of times the 100-night shelter is so full that people who live in Keene have no place to go. And last year, we spent an additional $500,000 to put Keene residents out in hotels and stuff. So when we have this Roosevelt, anybody can apply for this, and it's just based on income, right? Or is it?
Well, we have an existing waiting list, as I'm
Okay.
sure you know, that
Yep.
is currently around 2,500 households.
Okay.
So what we'll do is when we start to get ready to lease Phase 1 East, we'll send letters to everybody who's on our waiting list and say, hey, would you like to add Roosevelt School to the properties that you've applied for? Generally, the vast majority of those 2,500 households on our waiting list, we can tie, if not to Keene, to an adjacent community. So typically, the vast majority of the people we house are people with local roots.
Okay, yeah, because I just wanted to have something that would be supporting our community and the local community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have a local preference on our waiting list, but it's defined by Granite Staters get that preference.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Counselor Fabelese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was actually going to be my first two questions, was about, if you have a list and how many people are on it. My third question is a kind of would you agree question.
Okay.
Do you agree that housing is the number one issue facing our city and similarly situated communities right now, and that additional units like this for low and moderate income are
Yes,
affordable?
but it's asking me that question. My answer is yes, but it's sort of like asking the CEO of Ford if more people should have cars. Yes, it definitely, yeah, absolutely. For us, as I said, we have a list of around 2,500 households waiting, and for the vast majority of those, we can tie to the Monadnock region. So from our perspective, absolutely. I mean, and it's, insofar as we're involved with national conversations around housing, it's quite clear that it's a crisis, and it's national, and it hits the folks that we serve and the folks that we unfortunately can't serve because they're languishing on our wait list probably harder than most. But I think throughout, if you look at almost any income group right now, people need more housing. And, and Keene Housing can contribute a small amount to that, but this is one of those ways that we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Counselor Haas, Counselor Williams.
Thank you, Your Honor. Josh, just to refresh memory, how many units in phase one?
30.
And how's the schedule on that?
So far, so good.
When is completion?
We should start filling them, well, we actually have to have them filled by August of '26.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Williams.
Just a question about your wait list. What's a typical amount of time that a family would be on that list?
It really depends, Counselor, on are they elderly disabled or are they a family? Are they going to take first available, or do they really want to go to Stone Arch Village Senior, for example? So Stone Arch Village Senior I just raised because that's always the property we have the most demand for all of them. So in some instances, it could be 7, 8, 9 years that somebody waits for an apartment there. Whereas if you're a larger family, you might not wait quite as long. But in all cases, it's at least a year for a mobile voucher. Let's say, for example, if you're a disabled household on our wait list for one of our voucher programs that are specific to people with disabilities, it's as quick as a year. But the problem is you need to find a place. So, because you're keeping in mind that we have sort of two things going on at Keene Housing. We have our voucher program where people can take a voucher and go rent in the community, and then we have the properties that we own and manage. So we have both of those sort of business lines running at all times. And our vacancy rate in our properties is literally as long as it takes for us to turn a unit. So it's always under 2%. And our voucher program, the wait times vary based on some of those different characteristics of the household. But what we do find is people have a hard time finding a place to rent. You're welcome.
Further questions? I want to just follow up on that federal appropriation. If that is not forthcoming, what does that do to the startup of this project?
It won't affect this project, Mr. Mayor, but how it would affect us is it would affect our ability to move on to the next one, because we are going to have to tie up funds that are otherwise we would use for acquisition for the next thing. We're trying to be as aggressive as we reasonably can to bring new units online, and so we have a pipeline that's spoken for the next 6 or 7 years. But if that appropriation doesn't come, that's going to grind that to a bit of a halt for a little bit.
Yeah, good, thank you. And hence, this application remains relevant and important to your startup.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah. Very good. Any further questions, Mr. Meehan? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now would open the floor to any other comments from the public. Seeing no other public input, I will close the public hearing, and we will open up the second hearing on residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. Recognize Mr. Ahern again.
Thank you very much. If any displacement takes place as a result of the proposed CDBG project, the Uniform Relocation Act must be followed, which requires that any displaced household or business in a project using federal funds must be found comparable housing or commercial space in a comparable neighborhood at a comparable price. Under the certification section of the application, the city will certify that the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan is in place, and in the event that it is discovered that this specific project does displace persons or households, a displacement implementation plan must be submitted to the Community Development Finance Authority prior to obligating or expending funds. Because of the nature of this project, it is highly unlikely that any sort of relocation will be necessary. However, CDFA requirements still mandate that the city of Keene certifies that it will require the subrecipient to comply with the Uniform Relocation Act and Section 104D of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Ahern? Seeing none, thank you. Any further comment from the public? No further comment. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan and move on to our third hearing on the city's housing and community development plan. And again, I would like to recognize Mr. Ahern.
Thank you. The Housing and Community Development Plan is a document specific to the CDBG program and is composed of several key areas, those being the downtown, housing, economic development, and health and human services. Each section details the current conditions and proposed actions that would help alleviate need in the area in relation to CDBG funds. The minimum adoption schedule is once every 3 years. This document was last adopted last month at the previous application hearing. The Housing and Community Development Plan I am asking the council to re-adopt has had substantial updates. Most critically, it designates Monadnock Affordable Housing Corporation as a community-based development organization, or a CBDO. This designation enables Monadnock Affordable Housing Corp. To use CDBG funds for new housing construction as opposed to only renovations of existing structures. Additionally, the CDBG impact area section of the plan has been removed. This section was specific to a scoring metric that is no longer used by the Community Development Finance Authority. Other updates have been made to ensure that the HCDP references the most recent and relevant plans, reports, and supplemental documents. The proposed Keene Housing Project meets the listed HCDP goal to have a variety of housing options available that are affordable, accessible, eco-efficient, and supportive of varied lifestyles. The reason we updated the plan is because it was originally written by Linda quite a few years ago, I believe in the 80s. The first draft was made. It referenced older versions of the Keene City Master Plan. It did not include references to the newest housing needs assessment. So those were things that we brought to this new version to bring it up to date, and also give the CBDO designation so that they can use CDBG funds for new construction as opposed to rehab only.
Thanks
And
for
I'm
that clarity.
happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from councilors? Seeing none, we'll open the floor to the public. Any public comment? Seeing no further comment on housing and community development plan, we will close that public hearing as well. At this point, we've concluded our public hearing.
Thank you.
And public notice. I'd like to now pull forward from our agenda Resolution R 2024-45. It's the last item in your agenda. And would the clerk please read the resolution by title?
We have Resolution R 2024-45, a resolution relating to approving a CDBG application for Keene Housing's Roosevelt West Apartments.
And this is a time-sensitive matter that requires us to suspend our rules of order. I'd like to recognize Counselor Greenwald for a motion.
I'm sorry, I got this one, Council Lozey. Move to suspend section 27 of the rules
Second.
of order to act on resolution R 2024-45.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Greenwald, seconded by Counselor Bosley. This just takes a show of hands.
Nope.
Oh, sorry, this is a roll call, 2/3, to
Coun-
suspend the rules, of course.
Counselor Bosley.
Yes.
Counselor Tobin.
Yes.
Counselor Remy.
Yes.
Counselor Filio.
Yes.
Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Haas.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Madison.
Yes.
Counselor Roberts.
Yes.
Counselor Favelis.
Yes.
Counselor Lake.
Yes.
Counselor Workman.
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne.
Yes.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Counselor Greenwald.
Motion carries unanimously. We are now considering item R 2024-45. And would we now read the motion?
We're looking for a motion to adopt from Counselor Greenwald, if you'd be so kind.
I am ready.
Okay.
I have it this time. Move to adopt resolution R 2024-45.
Second.
So moved in by Counselor Greenwald and seconded by Counselor Bosley. So we are now considering the resolution. Are there further comments?
It's a show of hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
But further comments on this? We have it before us. Okay. Seeing none. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to the next section in our agenda, which is nominations and appointments.
As the mayor indicated at the beginning of the meeting, toward the end of the year, he always has the responsibility of looking at everyone's expiration of their terms and approaching incumbents to inquire whether they would be interested in serving a second term. So there's two memos in front of you. The first one reflects incumbents who want to continue their service on a particular public body. Two of these names, and I'll identify as I go through these, are actually regular members who have now maxed out on their 2 consecutive terms and are looking to shift to alternate positions. And I'll identify those as we go along. So to the Airport Development and Marketing Committee, Elizabeth Bendel. She's a renomination as a regular member with a term to expire December 31st, 2027. Christopher Ratter as an alternate, again wishing to continue his service to December 31st, 2027. And Nathan Jacobs, shifting over to alternate, was a former regular member, December 31, 2027. To the Ashwillet River Park Advisory Committee, this is a very long-standing member, Arthur Windsor, Bud Windsor, looking to shift to an alternate position, December 31, 2027. To the Building Board of Appeals and Housing Standards, this particular board does not have term limits. They are exempt from term limits. This is Doug Brown, continuing his service, December 31st, 2027. To the Congregate Living and Social Services Licensing Board, Andrew Oram, renomination as a regular member, again, the December 31st date. And Allison Welsh, again, a regular member, going to December 31st, 2027. To the Conservation Commission, Kenneth Bergman, again, a regular member, maxed out on his term, seeking to continue his service to the city by becoming an alternate member, December 31st, 2025. This is an unexpired term that he's going to be moving into. To Thomas Haynes, he has been a longstanding alternate member. Alternate members are exempt from term limits, so they have many, many years of service there. Again, December 31st, 2027. To the Historic District Committee, Dave Bergeron, a current alternate wishing to continue service, December 31st, 2027. Gina Burke, Human Rights Committee, December 31st, 2027. Susan Shaw on Keene Housing, December 31st, 2029. This is a 5-year term on that particular board. Partner City Committee, Eric Weisenberger, regular member, December 31st, 2027. To the Planning Board, Harold Farrington, December 31st, 2027. And Martha Curtis wanting to continue her service on trustees of trust funds and cemetery trustees.
Okay, and we'll continue that motion until our next scheduled meeting.
The second memorandum from the mayor is reflecting new members to join our various public bodies. To the Bicycle Pedestrian Path Advisory Committee, Dwight Fisher, December 31st, 2027. To the Building Board of Appeals, Housing Standards Board of Appeals, Stephen Tarbox to serve as an alternate. Sorry, that would be December 31st, 2027. To the Conservation Commission, Robert Milliken, December 31st, 2027. And a Gary Flaherty as a regular member, December 31st, 2027. To the Energy and Climate Committee, Maureen Nabinski, December 31st, 2027. Partner City Committee, Gerald Kuhn, December 31st, 2027. To the Zoning Board of Adjustment, Ted Schrantz, regular member, December 31st, 2027. Adam Burke, serving as an alternate, December 31st, 2027. And Stephen Tarbox, serving as an alternate, December 31st, 2027.
And there's a spelling on Nebenzahl. It's a L instead of an I, just to correct that as we.
Thank you.
But we'll refer this to our next regularly scheduled meeting as well.
Continuing on, we only have 3 communications this evening. The first one's from Maura McQueenie. She is the president and CEO of Home Healthcare Hospice and Community Service. She's looking for the council to consider establishing no parking on either side of the entrance at 312 Marlborough Street to their facility.
And we're going to refer this to the Municipal Services Facilities Infrastructure Committee, but we'll probably take that up at their January meeting, given the other items that are pending before MSFI.
Our second communication is from Tim Pip. He's the owner of B's T Screen Printing, and he's looking for the council to consider the necessary infrastructure that would be necessary to be accommodating large, long banners across Main Street. Just a correction in my background notes, we're talking about a 70-foot-long banner that hangs 18 feet above Main Street.
So this too would be referred to MSFI, and their meeting on January 22nd.
And our final communication is actually from Councilor Filio, and he is raising his concern about funding and the cost of downshifting from the state government. And he's looking for the council to consider delaying the downtown infrastructure project for at least 1 calendar year.
And in light of the fiscal related questions that are raised in Councilor Filio's letter, I'd refer that to the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. Councilor Filio.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I certainly appreciate my letter going to a committee. I do disagree on the committee that it's being sent to. But to have further discussion on that, pursuant to our rules of order, I need to challenge the chair on that. So pursuant to Section 13, right of appeal, I do hereby formally appeal the decision of the chair, and if I have a second, I'll explain why.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Second.
I understand that part of the decision of staff here to send it to FOP rather than MSFI is because there's financial implications on that. I get that. But for the 2 years that this project's been before MSFI, we've discussed the financial implications of it. We don't take final votes on every dollar value, but the whole project has been before us, including grants. We've asked many questions on grants all the way through, and I understand that part of the question will probably come back up again. And as far as issues with financial implications going before committees, last night at MSFI, the Route 9 Sullivan Road project came before MSFI. And we were told financially, we're going to handle it in-house. That came before MSFI. That is a financial decision, it is a road decision, and it came before MSFI. So we're not saying we're breaking precedents here. It came to MSFI last night. And it has in the past. Financial issues, go through committees. In the end, it's up to the Finance Committee to appropriate or shoot down financial decisions, then it comes back before the full council. So there is precedence that financial decisions or financial conversations go before other committees. And that's what I'm asking here, that it continues to go forward to MSFI. Secondly, Your Honor, is that in 2 weeks, the project comes before MSFI. I know many of our constituents, including some of the small downtown business owners that asked if I would write a letter such as this, are planning to come to that meeting to discuss the situation. For this to go to FOP instead of MSFI makes 2 separate meetings, and that is unfair to our constituents. From what I hear, there's probably going to be a good amount of people coming to speak for this. We need to be as transparent and simple as possible for our constituents. So that is my reasoning that it should go to MSFI. One, there is precedence that we do discuss financial issues, not the final vote, we discuss it. Secondly, we're already discussing this in 2 weeks anyhow. It's much easier to have my letter and have all the constituents come in and speak it in one night. And that's my reasoning for it to go to MSFI. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll offer some comments there and also turn to Assistant Deputy Manager for her comments. But MSFI has done great work as the Design Review Committee. That is certainly within the MSFI portfolio and purview. The financial questions that there are here is that we know that we have faced delays on this project. Every time we have, the consultants have come back and had to describe to us the financial impacts of those year-over-year kind of delays. And we have applied for grants and loans to satisfy the funding for the project. Some of which have time certain on that. I don't think that we've nailed that down necessarily, but we have applied based on the timeline that is before us. So I think that those are the real implications of the questions that Councilor Filio has raised. And I'd turn to Deputy Manager. Any further comments?
Point of order, Your Honor. According to the rules of order, no other member shall speak before this except the mayor and the challenging member of the city council.
Let's say that. But
Well, under the charter, the city manager has the right to speak during a council meeting, and it applies to members, councilor. The deputy city manager is not a member of the body.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We discussed this when we were preparing for the meeting as to what the mayor has alluded to already, that this is a financial question, which is why we were looking forward to it going to the Finance Committee. Our Public Works Director is going to have info for us on the grants impact for the committee meeting. I would love to give you all that detailed information here tonight, but we have phone calls to make. One example is the State Revolving Loan Fund that we had received word that we qualified for a significant amount of funding for the project. A good percentage of that was to be forgiven, which is great news. However, we now need to make some phone calls to see if any of that would change, if we should delay the project for a year. So that's just one example of a potential financial impact. As far as the project cost goes, if there is a delay, again, the Public Works Director is looking into construction standards and construction indices to present to the committee when it gets to that point. So those are basic comments for now. If anybody has any specific questions, I can answer them.
Well, actually,
Your Honor,
based on
point
the
of order, Your Honor.
rules, yeah.
I'm not arguing the decision of that. All that's going to be discussed. I'm discussing about what committee it should go through. That's fine. All that's gonna be discussed. I'm just saying we continue it at MSFI where it's been. I have no problem discussing any of that. It's just where it should be discussed, and I feel it should be discussed where it's been discussed for 2 years.
Again, I think those questions about the revolving loan fund and have been before FOP. And we will now go to a vote.
Just to be clear, Your Honor, under the rule, it should be stated that the question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? That's what you're.
Thank you. And it requires now by.
It's a majority of the members
It's a
present.
majority.
Yep.
It
No,
may be.
it does, let me see, yeah, roll call, thank you. Yep.
Clarify
the yes vote means what and a no vote means.
A yes vote means that we would then.
Sustain your decision to send it to FOP.
There you go. Okay. Would the clerk please call a roll?
Counsel Mosley,
Yes.
Counsel Tobin,
Yes.
Counsel Remy,
Yes.
Counsel Filio.
No.
Counsel Williams,
Yes.
Counsel Haas,
Yes.
Counsel Jones,
No.
Counsel Madison,
Yes.
Counsel Roberts,
Yes.
Counsel Favelis,
Yes.
Counsel Lake,
Yes.
Counsel Workman,
Yes.
Counsel Chadbourne,
No.
Counsel Powers,
Yes.
Counsel Greenwald,
No.
So the ruling of the chair is sustained, 11-4. So that'll be referred to the Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee. Moving on to council committee reports.
We have no council committee reports due to vacation or holiday last week.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
We have no council committee reports for this evening.
That settles that. We'll now move to the city manager's report and turn to the deputy manager.
Okay, thank you. First things first, I would like to say thank you to Logan, who is in our AV room right now. We have brought on a new part-time AV person who you will be seeing in these meetings from time to time. So welcome to Logan. Secondly, I'd also like to say we have our employee holiday luncheon coming up on December 12th. So that is going to happen from 11:30 to 1:30 in the Michael J. Blastos Community Room. And we open that invitation to all city councilors and the mayor. It's always truly a pleasure to have the council there, and we hope that you can make it this year. In addition to the employee luncheon, we will also be having the annual employee recognition for years of service and other awards. So we look forward to having you attend if you can. I would like to provide a little update on the parking bans. So we shifted this year to, as you know, to the winter weather parking ban. Instead of being having the parking ban in place overnight on street from November through May, we switched it to having it so that people can park on street unless there is a ban called by the Public Works Director. So you do have on your desks a memo that is sort of a recap of how the first two storms have gone. I'm going to summarize some of that information and also add some detail. We've talked about this afternoon, and we have some ideas. So in summary, on Thanksgiving Day, Public Works imposed the first winter weather parking ban, which was announced shortly before noon the Wednesday prior, and it became effective at 6 o'clock in the morning. The first test of the new rules went reasonably well, and our notification process worked as anticipated. I have to say we did everything we could possibly think of to get the word out about this ban. There was a mailing to thousands of residents, including renters, not just property owners. There was signage, there's podcasts, there's social media, website, email, you name it, we did it. So hopefully the word got out. When the parking ban was lifted at 8 o'clock Thursday evening, we identified an unexpected issue If we had sent out that text message at 7:59 PM, that would have been great. But the marketing platform that we use to send out text messages is very subscriber-friendly, and so it does not allow text messages between 8 PM and 8 AM, which is a regulatory issue. So that was one of the adjustments that we need to make going forward, and it's an easy adjustment to make. So we're also looking at alternative SMS messaging systems. The Public Works crews did note that there were 64 vehicles parked illegally in that first storm. So mostly on Court Street and Washington Street. This event required salt only. This first winter weather parking ban was salt only. So it was not a big problem. Keene Police has been great. They distributed flyers to each of the illegally parked cars instead of tickets. And that was to remind the owners of the new rules, tell them how to receive notifications. And we will request that in the future that the public police department consider ticketing as a means to encourage cooperation going forward. So at 6 o'clock on December 4th, just yesterday, 6 o'clock in the evening, the second parking ban was imposed. And compliance was a little better. There were approximately, it's funny, this says approximately 39 vehicles. I'm going to say 39 vehicles parked illegally. And before I go on, I will say that Chelsea North and our parking, as our parking manager, did a lot of research and talked to other communities. So it's not unusual to have this level of non-compliance in other communities that use the parking ban the way that we're doing it this year. But once again, the PD was very helpful, and major thanks to them, in either contacting the owner to have the vehicle moved or ticketing the vehicle if it was necessary. The illegally parked vehicles did not prevent Public Works from plowing any streets, but unfortunately, many areas were left with snow piles and slush in the parking stalls, which, as we know, it's been very cold. That will freeze overnight and make on-street parking more difficult. So until residents get used to the new rules, we will not be able to achieve the same level of service as we have in the past, but we're working towards that. So we are considering a slight adjustment to the time and duration of parking bans going forward. We had a conversation this afternoon about confusion around parking in paid or metered parking spots versus non-paid or non-metered parking spots, which we hadn't talked about before when the rules changed. So during parking bans that extend beyond the former 1 AM to 6 AM timeframe in previous years, it's different. And so now we'd like to try setting an all-street parking ban to those hours for the next storms to alleviate confusion and expand reasonable daytime parking options. So while still allowing for snow removal consistent with past practice. So there was definitely confusion this time around. If the snow ban was still in place after 6 AM, does that mean I have to go pay for parking in a parking lot, or can I park at a meter downtown and not worry about it? And so we're going to talk internally about trying to set a consistent time for a parking ban whenever we have a parking ban, whenever the storm hits, of 1 AM to 6 AM. That's how we managed it in the past, but now we can manage it on a storm-by-storm basis at the same hours. So that's, as this program evolves and we make adjustments, we're getting closer to the best way we can possibly operate it. So that's consistent with previous years. It is a common approach in other communities that use these storm-related parking bans as opposed to seasonal bans, and it does not require any change to the city code as it was recently amended. That's it.
Any questions for the manager? Counselor Haas.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Before we alleviated the on-street parking ban overnight, back when there was a ban in place, how many cars might be ticketed in any given night?
Well, the answer to that question is it was not storm dependent, right?
Right,
So
right, independent
it
of
really, there were too many, I don't have a good number for you or an average number. It could be a night when there were significant amounts of tickets, and there could be a night when the police department had plenty of other things to do. And so there weren't tickets, but I can follow up with that if you'd like. It would probably be a report that showed an average over a period of months for a
Yeah,
period of
no,
years.
there's no need. I just intuitively, I wonder how we compare with, is 39 like the good number, or will it be a lot less or more? When will you consider a success? So figure something out and see what we can measure to.
I will say that we received about $22,000 in revenue, in ticket revenue, in a year from the on-street parking bans that were November through May.
Thank you.
Counselor Fadalese?
Yeah, thank you. Not so much a question, but just a quick comment. I think that city staff has done a really good job of kind of throwing everything at the wall in terms of messaging this. This is a pretty significant change, and kind of part of the discussion all along was that there's going to be some hiccups. But I heard Dawn a little bit last night, and I hear you as well in a little bit of, like, we're trying to do more, and I think that's great, but just know that, like, I think that we're doing as best we can so far. I don't think there's anything that we didn't do that we could have done.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay. Moving on, we've got reports from boards and commissions and one ordinance before us.
And this evening, the Joint Planning Board, Planning License and Development Committee is making their recommendation on two ordinances. Our first one is Ordinance O 2024-19A, relating to building height in the Commerce District. The Planning Board side of the Joint Committee has it made a motion that the O 2024-19A is still consistent with the Comprehensive Master Plan. And on the Planning License and Development side of the group, they are recommending that the mayor set a public hearing. I did want to bring to the committee's attention sort of a new thing that you're going to start seeing, and when you get the joint committee report, is we've noticed that for the last year, maybe a little bit longer, we have not been getting, for the benefit of the counselors who are not a member of the PLD committee, what's called the staff report. So that's now in this packet. You can expect it any time that we set the public hearing, you will be seeing the staff report. And that is behind the actual committee recommendation. So looking for the mayor to set a public hearing on O 2024-19A.
And we'll set that public hearing for January 2nd, 2025, at 7 p.m.
Our second ordinance, again coming from the joint committee, the planning board had a motion that found that the 17A version of this ordinance is still consistent with the comprehensive master plan. And the committee, the PLD committee, is recommending the mayor set the public hearing, and behind it, you will find the staff report.
And because of the amount of public notice that there needs to be to this ordinance, we'll set this one for January 16th at front end of our council meeting at 7 p.m.
We only have one ordinance for first reading, and it is coming from Beth Fox, our Human Resources Director. And it is several changes to Chapter 62, which is our personnel chapter out of the city code.
And we will refer this to the Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee.
Last two items on our regular agenda are two resolutions. Our first is Resolution R 2024-40, a resolution in appreciation of Michael T. Cox upon his retirement.
And recognize Councilor Powers for a motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move for the adoption of Resolution 2024-40.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Powers and seconded by Councilor Mosley. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mike Cox has been with the city for 27 and a half years. And a lot of folks really ought to know him if you use water. Because my best description of him is, if there's an issue with a meter, this guy can fix it. And there are a lot of issues that have come up over this course of his career here, from the real old style meters that you had to go down cellar and take it off and pull it apart, put it back together, to today where you can drive by and he's got a little machine that records it, brings in all that information. He was part of the whiz of all of that, getting it put together and making these changes. He's been this is the best way I think any employee is described by a supervisor or fellow worker. He's a team player. He's the first to jump in and help out. Supervisor says he's a team player, goes above and beyond, first to volunteer, step out and do the right thing. And he's gonna be very hard to replace. There's great people in Public Works, but to have the knowledge that he has over the last 27 and a half years is phenomenal. We wish him the best of luck in his retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. No further comments? All those in favor of the resolution? Motion carries unanimously.
Our second resolution is R 2024-41, a resolution in appreciation of Harry S. McKelvey upon his retirement.
And Counselor Powers?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move for the adoption of a resolution 2024-41.
Second.
And moved by Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Bosley. Counselor Powers,
Thank you, Your
please.
Honor. I was having a little trouble trying to come up with the best description of Harry McKelvey. The first thing I quickly remembered as I read his proclamation is he and I started the same month, but it was 37 years ago. So it tells you we've been around a long time. Harry came to work in Public Works as a technician and an engineer. And in the next few years, there were a lot of financial issues in the city, and people got moved around because we didn't have enough funds in certain areas, move people around. And we were able to keep him during all that period, and he continued to move forward in his career here. Took over several different slots at last notice to keep things running for us, for the airport, for engineering, first-class engineer. He spent a little time at a different assignment right here in City Hall in IMS, right? That's the correct name then.
It was IT.
IT, well, okay. But again, Harry was out and about in every building, helping everybody out. Didn't have to be just an employee, you could be a city councilor, a public member was having trouble communicating. Harry would figure it out. His latest promotion is to a job that's probably the face of what's going on every day. And I'm sure this morning at about 3 o'clock when he got the page, he was thinking, this is my last month, and it is. Maybe today's the last storm, I don't know. But he's certainly done a great job for the city. He's a real great person. I wish him the best of luck. He lives in Ward 5, so I'll see him quite frequently. Best of luck to him.
And that resolution says that his retirement date is December 20th, so if you see him next week, you have the opportunity of thanking him.
Be at lunch.
Motion on the table. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Seeing no further business before us tonight, I would ask Counselor Grunwald for a motion.
I move to go into a non-public session to discuss the hiring of a person as a public employee under RSA 91A3 2B.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Greenwald and seconded by Counselor Bosley. This will take a roll call.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
Counselor Tobin?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Filio?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes.
Counselor Favelis?
Yes.
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Workman?
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Greenwald?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We will move into non-public session in 5 minutes.